Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network. Excited about camp week approaching. We are almost at fall camp week one for the Cincinnati Bearcats football team. We'll talk about that in the back half of the show, get to some offensive camp storylines. Who's going to be the lead wide receiver this year? Is the right tackle competition going to open up ever this August? Or will DeAndre Buford have that on lock through the entirety of the camp? We'll discuss all that. But first, we're going to get to Desmond Ridder returning to Cincinnati. He is part of the Bearcats, not the Bearcats, the Bengals, another B team football team in the city. The Bengals training camp roster, duking it out for a roster position in the Bengals quarterback room, returning to Cincinnati after stints in the NFL with the Raiders, Cardinals, and Atlanta Falcons. All that coming up on Bearcat Blitz. Bearcat Blitz returns. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer of the Front Office News. And Neil, Desmond Ridder signed to the Cincinnati Bengals training camp roster to open up training camp 2025 for Cincinnati. He beat out the likes of CJ Beathard and a couple of other veteran quarterbacks to get this shot back in the NFL. Now, on Monday, offense coordinator for the Bengals, Dan Pitcher, confirmed that Jake Browning is the backup. There is no competition for the backup as of right now. So Desmond Ridder is fighting for a possible third quarterback role, although it's very rare in the NFL for teams to carry a third quarterback on game days. So likely a practice squad opportunity there for Desmond Ridder if he sticks in Cincinnati. Or Neil, he's going to get, I'm sure, plenty of preseason reps, the opportunity to maybe spin him into a trade piece for a team that, like we see every single year, suffers a major quarterback injury and has to pivot at that position. Maybe not for a starting option down the line for a team, but maybe they need to boost their backup to starting position, and they're going to be looking for a backup because of that instance, and Desmond Ridder could be that option in the trade market over the next couple months. Interesting time in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a guy like CJ Beathard. Tyler Huntley, the former Pro Bowler, was also amongst that group that Desmond Ridder beat out. So that was cool to see. But Russ, it's always a full
I love
come.
that, Neil. Former Pro Bowler. Sure. Yeah, technically. Yeah, Tyler Huntley. Sure. He
I
was a
think he was
former
the
Pro
injury
Bowler.
replacement for Lamar a few years back. So I
He
don't
was
know if
the
he,
injury of the injury of the injury replacement
yeah,
a few
like
years back.
five injuries happened that way he could get there. But overall, it's cool to see a full circle moment for Desmond Ridder, right? Obviously, everybody knows what he did at Cincinnati. Stellar career, probably will go down. And arguably, Russ, I don't know if this might just be between me and you, but I'm fairly certain we're going to see the number nine retired in Nippert Stadium at one point down the line, hopefully. So
Yeah.
overall, that would be cool to
It's
see,
hard to
but
retire numbers in college football, but if
it
any
is.
UC
It
player
is.
deserves to have it retired, it's Desmond Ridder.
But on top of it, it's cool to see the full circle moment. Uh, the reunion with Zach Taylor, that's cool to see, especially with the relationship that Zach Taylor had in getting Desmond to Cincinnati in the first place, right? So overall, I think that's huge to see. But for people who remember, Desmond Ridder has never lost in Cincinnati. That's a great point to mention, but it's a good opportunity for him to now restore what could be an NFL career. Like you mentioned, a good opportunity, whether that's a practice squad or a potential trade piece. We know how injuries work in all of sports, especially at this time of year, now that training camp has opened up officially today. So overall, it's cool to see Desmond Ridder get the opportunity he deserves. I didn't think he got the best of opportunities down in Atlanta, and that's personally. Then he gets shipped off to Arizona, Oakland. So a lot of moving parts for Desmond Ridder now to finally come back to a full circle moment with an opportunity to make a practice squad here in Cincinnati. I think that's pretty cool for Des and his family, especially after everything that's gone down with his career at Cincinnati. He started his family here at Cincinnati with his daughters, and he got married in Cincinnati. So overall, it's a full circle moment for Desmond Ridder. And Russ, I know you and I had good relationships with Des when he was here at Cincinnati, but it's very exciting to see Desmond Ridder get another opportunity here in the NFL.
Awesome, awesome week for Dez for sure, keeping his NFL dream alive. And a player who's just starting their NFL dream signed to another training camp roster in the NFC this time. San Francisco 49ers running back Corey Kiner, former back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher at Cincinnati over the last two seasons, signs his training camp deal with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Neil, maybe not a practice squad spot on the table for Corey Kiner right away. He's going to have to earn it in a running back room that is juiced to the gills. Already 6 names in there, and one could argue he's sixth, if not probably, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt of being the fifth name in this room right now behind Christian McCaffrey, Isaac Orendo, Jordan James, excuse me, Patrick Taylor, Israel Banakanda, and Corey Kiner making up the bottom of that running back room. He signed, Neil. He's got a shot. We'll see if Corey Kiner can maybe at least make it onto the practice squad for the San Francisco 49ers when things are all said and done in the first week of September.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And I think that's a good shot to kind of mention there, right? Because Corey Kiner went undrafted in the NFL draft this past season, or this past May. But on top of it, you look at the opportunity that Corey Kiner has. You mentioned the names of Isaac Garendo and a couple of those other guys out there. Christian McCaffrey is obviously going to be the starter. Everybody knows when he is healthy, he is arguably one of the best running backs in all of football. But for Corey to have an opportunity to go out to San Francisco and learn from a guy like Christian McCaffrey throughout camp is huge, right? I think that's a good opportunity. But Russ, arguably, there's a good opportunity where Corey could land a practice squad deal or even make the active roster due to how much inexperience that 49ers roster kind of has out there, right? You don't have a proven running back outside of Christian McCaffrey. So there's a lot of opportunities for those other running backs within that room. And or anybody who knows Corey Kiner knows he's going to go in there and he's going to make the best of his opportunity. He's going to give you 110%. So I'm excited to see what kind of works out there. I know I was talking to Easton West Shrine Bowl player of personnel and director of operations Eric Galco down in Fort Worth, Texas at the Big 12 Media Days just a couple weeks ago. And man, Corey Kiner was a guy who went out to the Easton West Shrine Bowl and really balled out and had a good performance. And I know Eric was raving about him down there, and he was excited for what is to come for a guy like Corey out there in San Francisco. So I'm really excited for Corey. Obviously, Russ, you and I got to kind of similar to Des, build a very good relationship with him, but I'm excited
Just
for
seems like
Corey
a
out
really great guy. Like it just one of the personalities and just the nice voices that really has stuck out this decade, and a player who really does. I mean, he's humble. He returned to Cincinnati. He returned to his hometown, stuck with it through a staff change. I mean, this is a guy that you root for and you hope, Neil, he can at least get NFL paychecks on the practice squad throughout this season. If not, like you mentioned, sneak onto that roster in the back end of the training camp ledger. Once we get there, we're almost to the fall camp ledger for Cincinnati Bearcats football. 1 week at Camp Higher Ground confirmed. Will they go longer than that? Who knows? We'll see what happens with that after we get past the first week of higher ground action. But it's on the table. They're starting on Monday, July 28th, and we have some storylines to get to ahead of that start, which is exactly 1 month to the day from their kickoff against Nebraska at Arrowhead Stadium on the Thursday to open week 1 of the college football season. Neil Meyer, Russ Eltman back with you after these messages on Bearcat Blitz. Taking us to the finish line here on Bearcat Blitz, listening to it on the Believe Network. So, Neil, let's start. We talked about the offensive line consistently. That's obviously one of the top camp storylines, and you feel free to offer any ones that we don't end up talking about here at the end. But the wide receiver core. I mean, this is one we haven't talked about a lot in terms of just the turnover that Cincinnati is really going to be hit in the face with this coming fall on the offensive side of the ball. Xavier Henderson, gone. Tony Johnson, gone. Jamoy Mays, gone. Sterling Burkhalter, gone. Neil, that's 4 of your top 5 receivers by yardage last season, including your number 1 receiver by yardage in Xavier Henderson and your top catch man at that at 59 catches. Joe Royer, obviously back, Neil. He was your second leading receiver with 50 catches for 521 yards, but they have to replace the production basically everywhere else on top of, I would imagine, working in some more passing game looks for Evan Pryor. He only had 15 catches for 181 yards last year. I would imagine that gets closer to the 25 to 30 range this coming fall, and maybe work him out in some 2-back looks, Neil, where you have Tawee Walker in the backfield, maybe used Evan Pryor in the slot a little bit more as you replace Tony Johnson, that go-to slot weapon, and use Evan Pryor in that sense a little bit more. That could be an option for the Bearcats. But there's going to be a completely new hierarchy besides Joe Royer in this passing game. And who will it be as that number one wide receiver? My odds on favorite, honestly, I think Caleb Goody is my pick to be the leading receiver for the Bearcats this coming season. It could be Jeff Caldwell if he hits like he could hit right away with that deep passing acumen. It could be Cyrus Allen as well. Noah Jennings throwing his name in the ring there. Barry Jackson, can he flash and really make an impact as what a redshirt sophomore this coming season? He only had 3 catches for 22 yards last year after what we all expected to be a much more impactful 2024 season, given what he did as a during a freshman before he redshirted in 2023. So a lot to parse through here, Neil, and definitively, unless Joe Royer is like the most productive tight end in the entire nation, which is not out of the question this coming fall, they're going to have a new leading receiver on the field when we get to the end of November.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to kind of note that because Scott Satterfield even mentioned it multiple times this offseason. Despite the offensive line, the wide receiver room was arguably the biggest upgrade and position of need for Cincinnati this offseason, right? You lose Sterling Burkhalter to Wake Forest. Xavier Henderson gets an invite to the Bills minicamp. I don't know if he got offered or if he signed a deal out there, but I know he was in the NFL minicamps. And then you lose a guy like Tony Johnson who transferred after spring ball to Miami. Then you lose your other top receivers. It's never easy when you lose your top four, your top five receivers from a season ago. Jamoy Mays signs with Cincinnati. So overall, it's never easy. But for me, Russ, you mentioned a guy like Caleb Goody being the guy that's going to potentially come out and lead Cincinnati as your pick. I'm gonna go with Jeff Caldwell on the outside, and the reason I say that is because of the big frame and the big stature he has. 6'5",
Yeah.
220 pounds roughly. And Russ, he had a fantastic spring, to say the least. Really made an impact. And on top of it, Russ, I don't think we've seen a guy that size outside of Cincinnati's wide receiver room in arguably 3 to 4 years, maybe. I
I
know
mean,
Alec.
It's nobody with his skill set since Alec Pierce for
Yeah,
sure.
with Alec Pierce at six, and Alec Pierce was only what, 6'3", maybe. So
Right.
overall, Cincinnati hasn't had a dynamic playmaker on the outside since Jeff Caldwell or since Alec Pierce, and I think Jeff Caldwell could come in and make that impact on the outside. But you're mentioning some of the slot guys there. I was very impressed with Cyrus Allen throughout camp. I know Scott Satterfield mentioned when they recruited him from Texas A&M, he had a little bit of a forearm injury. They weren't sure if he was even going to be ready to go for spring ball. He came in and knocked out 15 of 15 practices and made a big impact there. I think he is poised for a big year for Cincinnati. And you could kind of sense when talking to Brendan Sorsby at Media Days as well that him and Cyrus Allen are going to have a very good relationship because he mentioned he joked around and was like, Cyrus is a guy who will let you know, hey, I need the ball in my hands. Get me the ball right away in the opening minutes of a game. So look for Cyrus Allen to play a big role. Look for a guy like you mentioned, Cyrus Allen, Caleb Goody as well. I'm really curious to see what kind of role Caleb Goody could have there, especially being 6'1", 180 pounds. He is a quick, fast, very explosive wide receiver. So on top of guys like Jeff Caldwell, Caleb Goody, Cyrus Allen, I'm really looking for those three guys to kind of make an impact. Noah Jennings as well. I'm really curious to see his role. But Russ, for me, I think the wide receiver room, when you look down, I think the wide receiver that's going to come in and make an immediate impact is true freshman Gianni Contosis. I know that's been a name that's been flirting out there a lot from Scott Satterfield in media scrums and whatnot. But Russ, I watched him at Elder last year in person right after he committed to Cincinnati. And despite him only having 4 catches for 26 yards, he made the game for Riverdale Baptist during his senior season, right? So overall, he opened things up for now Maryland commit Jaden Kitchens to kind of go off and have 2 touchdowns, 160 yards or whatever it was in that game. But Gianni Contosis, man, Russ, after spring, he does not look like a freshman wide receiver. Scott Satterfield even mentioned that he thought Gianni Contosis had probably the most impressive spring camp. And I think we all can kind of agree on that statement, right? 6'1", 210 pounds. He's a physical wide receiver. Cincinnati hasn't had a physical wide receiver probably since Alec Pierce as well, where they can go out there, they can get you a block, they'll get physical, they'll create separation. So I'm really excited for that wide receiver room, but most importantly for guys like Jeff Caldwell and Gianni Contosis.
Yeah, Gio, it would be mighty impressive if he can even, I mean, have double-digit catches as a freshman. I mean, it does not happen, especially if you're not a high four-star, top-tier five-star freshman. It rarely happens in the college football ranks, especially the power conference ranks, where you have a guy that young at the wide receiver spot. Obviously, with the linebacker role, with some of those roles where you're getting more deep into the depth chart, it can happen. But it would be shocking considering Katosis, I believe, Neil, was like their second or third highest rated recruit in the class
Mhm.
after Zion Johnson last year, so or entering this season. So very, very good breakdown there from Neil. And Neil, what do you think? Do you think there's any competition at the right tackle spot? Obviously, there's going to be competition throughout. They're going to be evaluating throughout. But do you think there is any real threat to DeAndre Buford at right tackle ahead of game one against Nebraska? Do you feel like they roll through that, they see how he does with a veteran presence, with all the snaps that he's had to be able to throw him right away against a top tier opponent compared to who you're facing the week after in Northwestern State? Do you feel like they go with that safe route to start the season, especially knowing you need to be as ready to go, as polished as possible against Nebraska, and then assess from there? Or could he get realistically pushed throughout fall camp?
Realistically, Russ, I think he gets pushed through fall camp.
I do too.
Like,
I don't think this is all said and done. I would at this point I would be a little surprised if DeAndre Buford has full control of this job throughout leading into Nebraska.
yeah, me too. And I think the reason we say that is, right, he has started the last 2 years at Cincinnati. But with a new revamped offensive line, DeAndre Buford saw a lot of his time at guard too and tackle. Like he switched between the two. But now that Cincinnati's guards are kind of set in stone essentially with Tarantayo and Evan Tangesdal, it's going to be interesting to see how does a guy like DeAndre Buford head into camp with the mindset of, okay, I'm looking to be a 3-year starter. Do I have the right mindset there at the right tackle position? Or say something happens, an injury, or he gets off to a slow start in camp, whatever it might be, Cincinnati's going to have people coming in ready to play right behind him, right? You have guys like Xavier Lozowicki, you have Ethan Green, you have these quality guys that they brought in the transport. Nolan Latalippe is another name we have heard kind of float around there. But it's going to be interesting, Russ. It really is. Because, I mean, you look at how Cincinnati's offensive line is set right now. You have Joe Cotton at the left tackle, who's 6'7". You have Evan Tangenthal as one of your guards, who's 6'4", 310 pounds, probably the strongest he's been throughout his career. Tarantayo at your other guard spot, who's 6'3" and just a freak athlete. I mean, we all talk about the strength that Tarantayo has. And then you have Gavin Gerhardt returning as your veteran captain up front. And then that right tackle, it's gonna get interesting at right tackle. And Russ, now that we only get 1 week at Camp Higher Ground, with the other week potentially being here back in Cincinnati at the IPF, it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of depth we really see at the right tackle position. Could a guy like Ethan Green come in and make an impact? The guy who's 6'6", 6'7", wrestling background. It's gonna be interesting to see these younger guys come in and push and try to compete with DeAndre Buford at that right tackle position. I know Scott Satterfield mentioned it at Big 12 Media Days that they're rocking with DeAndre Buford as a 3-year starter, but it's going to be interesting to see how do Nick Cardwell and these guys develop these offensive lines and who comes in and ready to make a push and see what this depth is all about. But I'm thinking we're heading into Nebraska here in about a month, Russ, and I think we're going to have some competition at that right tackle position.
It's a fascinating issue for Nick Cardwell and Scott Satterfield, Neil, because like normally, I mean, you probably, if Northwestern State was first, and given maybe how close it is in that competition, excited to hear from Scott Satterfield, not necessarily Monday, because they wouldn't have been really competing at all. We're going to hear from Scott Satterfield this coming Monday, but I want to ask him next Saturday, Neil, when we get a kind of week into the grind of camp, how that spot is really feeling. If he's firm and saying DeAndre's our guy, we're ready to roll with him through the end of this camp and into Nebraska, boom, bing, bam, done. It's over. The competition's done. But if he's leaves the door open a little bit there, it gets really interesting because you're not going to, I mean, against Northwestern State, you'd let one player play one half, another player play another half, and assess maybe the game tape that way. It's really hard to do that in this first matchup against a Nebraska team that's going to be pinning their ears back, ready to go if they see right tackle by committee option coming from the Cincinnati Bearcats. So a different issue for Cincinnati to deal with in this year of Scott Satterfield's tenure compared to previous, because they are facing a legit, solid bowl caliber power conference team in a neutral site, not in their home confines, to open the season. Any other offensive camp storylines stick out to you, Neil, before we get out of here?
I think the biggest ones for me, Russ, is the wide receiver and the offensive line
Yeah,
positions. I think those are the two most offensive line storylines because everybody knows what you're getting at running back with Evan Pryor returning and Tawee Walker. You kind of know what you're getting at the tight end position with Joe Royer, Pat Gerd, Devin Zahersky, Gavin Grover. You know what you're getting there.
yeah,
But I think most importantly, it's going to be how do these wide receivers step up for the challenge here in a completely new locker room, essentially,
yeah.
wide receiver room, with only one returner in Barry Jackson. I am excited to see what role Barry Jackson will have this season, especially being the one returner from a season ago. I'm curious to see
Right.
how he can.
Third year in this offense too. Can he
Mhm.
use that continuity to take a big leap and fill some of this power vacuum that's wide open in the terms of the targets?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to see what kind of role that was. I know the first 2 years didn't go as expected for a guy like Barry Jackson, but I'm excited to see what that offensive line and that wide receiver room. But I think those are your two main offensive storylines heading into camp.
And that deep ball too, which ties into the wide receivers. How often is that hitting in the first couple of weeks of camp? How frustrated are they with it? How happy are they with it? Is Brendan Sorsby dialed in on that front? The deep ball, the most meat left on the bone for Cincinnati to gnaw on in terms of getting this offense closer to the top half of the country as opposed to the bottom half of the country when we get things going in just a little over a month. Camp almost here. We'll get to the defensive storylines for fall camp from the Cincinnati Bearcats football team in the back half of this week. Until then, it's been Bearcat Blitz. Talk to you all on Friday, everybody.